Hello, students. So we are now in world geography. We're on video number 12 right there. So we're going to be looking at climate and precipitation, or what I like to call is God's provision, part of God's provision. Stepping back, God made the earth for us, really. The entire earth was made for humans. He made it, and then he gave us charge over it. He gave us responsibility over it. So it is for us to use, and to use well. And sometimes people get caught in the mix of, well, we can't do anything to hurt the earth, or we have to do this thing that keeps people from being able to cultivate the earth or find things. And their intentions are good, but again, we were given the earth to rule over and to make better and to find and discover things. And so in the midst of that, God also made provision for us to be able to be provided for, excuse me for a moment, and for us to be able to grow crops, and different things like that. So we're going to look at part of God's provision when it talks about climate and precipitation. So this time I've already printed out your reading, so you will have this in hand this time. So again, I apologize about last week. Sorry. All right, so it says, Cherrapunji, located in the Seven Sisters region of India, is located from the mainland geographically, politically, religiously, and culturally. So it's in the middle. So it's kind of isolated. Climatologically, this town of 10,000 is like no other place on earth. It is widely considered the wettest place on the world, receiving 450 inches a year. A year, people. That is over 37 feet. As is the case with all averages, some years produce dramatically more rain, so they can probably get up to 40 to 50 feet a year. During a 12-month period in 1860 to 1861, 900 inches fell, including 366 inches in 1 month. That's 12 feet of water more than 12 feet. It's like 30 feet of water in 1 month. That's nuts. Yet this soggy tropical village faces an unthinkable crisis every winter: drought. For several months, residents must trek to nearby water sources to obtain potable water. That means water you can drink. And plants and agricultural interests suffer direly. It is a truly bipolar climate where summers bring flooding and rainfall not seen anywhere on the planet, and winters leave the land thirsty and aching. Now, we have an interesting situation here. God has given provision, correct, for this area of the world. Now, what is happening? Why is it that they aren't able to use all the water? Well, part of the reason is technology, and man's ability to use what God has not advanced far enough for them. So if you get that much water, you should be able to store water or do something that allows the water that God sends us and provides for them to be able to use all year round. Also, I got Jim over here. He's hanging out with me today, so just say hello to Jim. But going back, God has given us the resources, but we just have to be able to develop technologically well enough to be able to use the resources he has for us. It says, any town or village able to mount a claim to fame like this is surely to benefit greatly. So Cherrapunji's opponents have lined up to dethrone it. So Hawaii nominates its Mount Wailele for the title, citing data that shows the peak endures some years when rain falls every single day. Recent data has put Cherrapunji's neighboring town of Mamosinram slightly ahead of it in rainfall count, with around 39 feet annually. 39 feet. That is 3 feet a month. But regardless of the precise measurements, Cherrapunji is remarkable in its seasonal climate variation, a phenomenon that owes to the source of its rain and its geographic situation. So again, it's not so much that God hasn't provided in those dry months, it's how do we take what he has given us to sustain us through that time. In this far eastern swath of India, precipitation is supplied by summer monsoons that pound the coast, carrying saturated ocean air to the hills nearby. So again, God's provision. These air masses must often cool before releasing their contents in the higher elevations where Cherrapunji lies provided the perfect place for this. Because the monsoonal conditions are behind the climate, however, conditions take a sharp turn when monsoons dry up, hence the dehydrated winters. Cherrapunji and surrounding region, virtually all of Southeast Asia, lie in a tropical wet zone, and they are just one example of the climate extremes found throughout the largest continent on Earth. So the biggest continent, they've got the largest extremes. Okay, so we're going to skip down. I want you to read. I want you to read at home this part right here, and we're going to pick back up right here. So it says, across the tundra in Siberia, conditions are exceedingly harsh, a fact reflected by population patterns. The population density of Siberia, which at 5 million square miles, so that's how big Siberia is. Siberia is, let me see if we can see it here on the map. It's the northern area of Russia. So it is a very large area of land, 5 million square miles. Is about the population density, which means how many people is in one place, is about 8 people per square mile. So every square mile average, there's about 8 people. Even this figure is misleading, as most of the population lives in cities, leaving vast areas of land untouched by human habitation. Again, our world has plenty of space still. Now it's up to us to figure out how to use that space, how to govern it, how to take dominion over it. A few small towns have sprouted in the tundra, towns like Pevek and Tiksi, with just a few thousand people who have braved sub-freezing temperatures most of the year. Compounded by harsh winds, unobtruded by trees or hills, so it's just flat open space, Norilsk is the largest city here, 135 residents strong, 135,000. And so that's like 5-6 times the size of Reedley. The residents endure an average annual temperature of around 15 degrees. That's average. That's cold. We don't even get that cold here in Reedley. And snow cover about 270 days a year. So you really got to love the snow. Northern Siberia's location in the Arctic Circle means daylight hours are atypical. So check this out. For several weeks every winter, the sun does not rise at all. So for several weeks, nobody sees the sun. On the flip side, the aurora borealis provide a spectacular nightly dance at these high latitudes. But also, for several weeks in the winter, the sun does not rise, but for several weeks during the summer, the sun never goes away. It always has sun. So, in subarctic areas where the ground does thaw out, conditions are slightly more tolerable, but only slightly. Irkutsk is one of the larger cities in Siberia. See summertime highs in the 70s with especially warm days topping 80 degrees. In December and January, however, highs often remain in the single digits, and the city has recorded lows colder than negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold, really cold. Wind chills, whose ability to turn a cold day into a brutal one is heightened in these cold regions, are not quite so pronounced in the subarctic due to tree cover. So the trees help break up the wind. Although much of the land here is flat and fantastic breeding ground for winds, the forests provide important barriers that slow the wind. Areas near lakes are often slightly milder. Irkutsk is a prime example. Warned by its proximity to Lake Baikal, still few people choose to live in these parts, and with good reason. One of Siberia's more dubious claims to fame is that it hosts the coldest inhabited place on Earth, Yakutsk, where a temperature of negative 90 degrees was recorded in 1892. Negative 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So imagine like how hot it is on a summer day. Like then imagine the opposite of that, like coldness. Frostbite on open skin is within minutes. So you can't even go outside. But again, my question is, how are we going to take dominion over that area? And what secrets and what resources lie in that area that we do not know about yet? That's what you always got to ask in areas that are vast and uninhabited. What is God holding there for the person who goes and finds it? So we're going to, so we stopped right here. And I'm going to have you read all of this. I'm going to pick up right here in the last paragraph. Although much of Asia falls under a semi-arid classification, the designation serves only loosely to tie the region together. Across the picturesque Mongolian steppes, precipitation is somewhat scarce, so it's almost like desert. It's very dry. The rainiest regions receive around 15 inches a year. That's not a lot. The driest just a few inches. In the colder and more mountainous regions, much of the precipitation can fall as snow. While the actual measurements may be decent in these regions, precipitation as snowfall is sometimes less helpful to plants and wildlife. So the dryness is more taxing on local ecosystems. Asia's sheer size means that some interior lands are far more distant from the ocean than in, say, South America. So because Asia is so big, there's places that are very, very, very far from the coast, as opposed to such like North and South America. It's not as bad. Asia's sheer size, let's see. Say South America. So places like Kabul, Afghanistan sport distinctly continental versions of semi-arid climate. Afghanistan's capital city heats up dramatically during the summer. July averages regularly top 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But on frosty winter days, the mercury often dwindles below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty big difference. 24-hour temperature swings are also drastic here, as nighttime temperatures can drop chillingly low even in summer. It's because they're in the desert. The desert or dry places don't hold in the heat like other places do. A phenomenon called Zud, an extremely cold and snowy winter, ravages Mongolia occasionally and can kill huge numbers of livestock because they cannot find food beneath the thick snow cover. So again, animals have to find food, but sometimes they don't. All right, so you're going to read this area. So start here, read down here, and let's pick up reading about the Tibetan Plateau. So the Tibetan Plateau, and certainly the Himalayas to the south, have a decidedly highland climate, and relatively few people have opted to experience it by settling here. Again, it's a harsh place to live. Let me check something real quick. There's something I wanted to... Okay. And relative few... Ice and permanent snow cover are the norm in western China, whose elevations are higher than many tall mountains elsewhere in the world. The towering Himalayas are a barrier to monsoonal winds from the Bay of Bengal and block virtually all precipitation from heading north. So the Tibetan Plateau is quite a dry region. The high elevations across the plateau keep it cold here, and of course, winds increase and temperatures drop in higher mountain elevations. Kathmandu, Nepal, is located on the confluence of several climatic regions. So this city in Nepal, Nepal is a very... Here, I'm going to switch this up. Nepal is a very small country that's in between India and China. It is mountainous because it's in the heart of the Himalayas. It holds, it's host to the tallest mountain in the world. It's also, I think, well, you'll see as you do your geography maps. It's basically almost all mountains. No, and it's in a place where a lot of different climate zones come together, which is very interesting too, on a side note. So in 2007, I actually spent a month in Nepal. I went with a missionary organization called YWAM. We went to Nepal and we did 2 or 3 different things. And one of the things that I love that we got to do is we actually got to go trekking through some of the smaller mountains that are called the Annapurna Range. It got up to about 10,000 feet. And we hiked through there and we stopped along at these villages and we encouraged and shared with the Christians who were there. Some of these villages were very small because you can't even get there by automobile. No trucks, nothing. What they do is they have trains of oftentimes donkeys or cows that take supplies up these trails that are maybe 5-6 feet wide, and you can see just lines of these animals going up the side of the mountain. And we would follow those or sometimes go around them. But a very interesting thing about Nepal is that when you look at the people of Nepal, they look like a mixture of all over Asia. There's some people who look like they come from China, some people who look like they come from the Philippines, some people who look like they come from India, some people look like they come from Afghanistan, Pakistan. It's quite interesting because it's like a mix of all of these nations in this one tiny place. It's like the one place where a bunch of people came together, and ironically enough, also the the climatic regions also joined at that spot. So it's very interesting how that occurred. Most of the populations of India and China live in the plains, home to humid subtropical climate. In Shanghai, China's summers are warm and winters are cool to mild. So, on a side note again, when y'all get back, I will go through and dig through some old pictures, and we'll take a look at some of the pictures from Nepal, because it's pretty amazing what people did in Nepal. There are mountains everywhere like this, and what they did is they've carved out of the mountain, going up and down the mountain, these flat areas. And what they do is they actually grow crops on these places. They're called steeps. There's places that are carved out of the mountain, and they're just acres of them that must have been done generations ago. Maybe, I don't know, hundreds, could be thousands of years ago. So I'll bring some pictures in for that. In Shanghai, China, summers are warm and winters are cool to mild. Monsoons exert a presence here, bringing heavy rains from June through September, but snowfall is rare. New Delhi, India is similar. Average highs range from 58 degrees to 92 degrees, and most rainfall comes during summer. Places farther inland demonstrate more noticeable seasonal temperature swings and are increasingly protected from the monsoon. So we got to right here. I'm going to let you finish reading the rest of this, and then we look at life principle. It is an old saying that everyone talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it. In other words, perhaps our time would be better spent discussing the things over which we have some control, rather than complaining about what we can't change. It was actually an idea that was Solomon's, King Solomon, wisest man on the earth. And he was talking sometimes about the fact that why are you complaining and worrying and getting a fret about the things you can't control? You're constantly looking at the weather. You can't control the weather. You can't do anything about it. But you're not doing anything about the things that you can control. So that is lesson 4. Actually, this is video number 12. So let's make sure we get that right. Video 12. It is climate and precipitation, God's provision. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to stop there because my voice is getting kind of sore. So hope you all are doing well. Have a good day.